Hello, in this demo, I'm going to show you how to use Microsoft's Deployment Toolkit, Light Touch, to be able to use it for actual zero-touch imaging. That's right, you heard me correctly. We're going to use MDT as a light touch option to be able to push an image to 100, 1,000 machines without touching a single computer. So what we have in this demo is we have a Windows 7 64-bit and a Windows 8 64-bit image. These two machines are taken from the end user's perspective. So this is two VMs that I have. Just think of these as if you're physically at the computer looking at the console. I have a little timer that we're going to look through the imaging process to see how long it takes. And then I'll actually show you the script that I'm running and the actual settings that I'm using as well. So let's go through how this process is actually working. So once you have your Microsoft Deployment Toolkit up and running, you have everything set, all your drivers are loaded, your boot images are there, everything is working correctly as it should. You need to go in and edit your custom settings.ini file that you can go do through the GUI, or you can do it directly on the file as well. But you need to edit it so that it takes care of all of the automation of all of the prompts for you. This will make the process true zero touch so that when you run the script, it won't ask or prompt the end user for anything. So a couple of things to notice here. One is the deployment type is a refresh. Refresh is defined by Microsoft as anytime that you run the lighttouch.vbs script from within the Windows, it will still wipe the drive, it'll still clean everything off the computer, but you need to have that as a refresh versus an install or an upgrade. The next one to look at is OSD computer name. We're using the local variable %computer name %, and what this will do is this will actually take the local computer name, store it into PE, so when it reboots and it wipes everything, it'll retain that name and then put it back into Active Directory as that computer name. So again, there's no prompts. The next thing you want to look at is the bootstrap.ini file. In here, this is where you automate the process so that it goes through and selects the image from the task sequence ID. If you don't have this set, then it'll actually prompt you for the image, and this is how you get the true zero touch to push out the image that you want. So whatever the task sequence ID of the image that you're selecting, this is what you want to put here. The next part of this is a script that you need to have on the local computer. You can compile this from a batch file to an executable, and there's many different ways that you can do this. So this is the actual process that's going to kick off the lighttouch.vbs script. And some of the things that I've added here is I just want to make sure that the user that is running this script is who I want it to be. Otherwise, it will just exit out and go to end the file. The second thing that I want to check for is running system info and making sure that this is not a server. It's not a server OS, because the last thing you want somebody to do is accidentally run this on one of your servers. For whatever reason, I mean, technically they could run it remotely, if they had rights to do so. But doing this will just put in a little bit of extra checks just to make sure that if somebody runs this by accident, then it won't just wipe something. The next part of this is a member workstation, so I'm doing a triple check to make sure that it's not a server and to make sure that it is a workstation before we actually run this process. So in here I'm running psexec, which will emulate a logged in user session because the user that we'll be using to log into the machine to kick off this process will not have admin rights. They actually don't even have access to the deployment share. So by doing it with this user account, this account will have admin rights on the machine and does have read access to the deployment share. The next part of this is the actual scheduled task. You can use group policy to push this out on the machine. So this is what the scheduled task actually looks like. This is the first one, and this is the triggers tab. Here's the actions tab. Here are the conditions tab. And here is the settings tab. And of course, there's nothing really to show you in the history. And here is the last and final piece of this process. So this is the script that a sysadmin or a tech or somebody at the help desk could run And this is just a batch script that will go through and read a list of IP addresses or computers from a CSV file, loop through a subroutine. So as you see here, it'll loop through. It checks to see if it is a Windows machine. So just in case you have the wrong IP address, or if it's a non-Windows OS, then if the Windows directory doesn't exist, or if the firewall is set where you don't have access, it'll just error out and it'll write it to the log file here. If that's successful, it'll go down. You can just copy any files that you want to. That is just a prerequisite. If you had something that you want to get on the machine before that you would find useful, you can do that from here. And then finally, rdp.exe. This is a free utility that I use. This will actually kick off as many RDP sessions as you want to on as many machines as you want to. I use this so you can actually still specify the username and password, the domain. There's a whole lot of other options as well, and you can set the width and the height just to make everything easier when you're running this. So the overall process here is we have our custom settings, we have our Bootstrap INI configured, right? And then we have a script on the local machine that will kick off the lighttouch.vbs process. And then we have a scheduled task that is defined to only run with a specific user account. So that way, whenever we run our RDP session against that user, it will log in with that account and then automatically kick off the imaging process so that no one has to physically be at the computer. And then finally, we have the script that is used by the tech to loop through as many machines as they need. That can be used to re-image as many machines simultaneously as their network will allow. Okay, so now that we've gone through everything and I've explained the process and how it works and what you need to do to get it set up, let's actually show you what it looks like from the end user's point of view, as well as from the tech's point of view. So remember, this is from the end user's point of view, from what they would see, and this is my little timer down here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer, and I'm going to kick off the script as a tech, and I'll show you what everything looks like. So let's go ahead and run this, and I'm going to kick off the script. So it just copied everything down to the machine. So this is creating an RDP session to one of the remote workstations. So you can see from the end user's point of view, you don't actually see anything, you don't actually notice anything. Okay, so this is actually running it on the other one as well. So you can see it's logging in as the account. Now it's going to do a few things. So the delay is the system info. Remember that I'm running to check to make sure that it is the user account that I want, to make sure that it is not a server OS, and to make sure that it is a desktop OS. And then of course all the prereqs just to show you that you can actually connect to the machine. You could put some ICMP test in if you want to, as well as the Explorer directory and that kind of thing. So you can see when this runs through, this is actually running the MDT process as you would expect. It goes through all the prompts, it bypasses, it runs all the automation for everything. So it's not asking you for the computer name, it's not asking you for the select an image, the select applications. All that stuff is defined in the task sequence that we got into the bootstrap.ini file. So you can see the Windows 7 machine, that's the one that I ran first. It's gone through. At this point now it's going to boot into Windows PE, and remember, nobody's at this machine. Nobody physically had to touch this machine. The only requirement is that it's just physically turned on and has network access. That's pretty much it. Okay, and you see my Windows 8 machine right here. This is my RDP session. It says it's restarting. So eventually, yep, there it goes. So that one drops. The Windows 8 machine is going to start the reboot now. You can see on this one, it's already started. It's going to wipe the drive, and then it's going to start installing the operating system that we defined. My timer's still running down here. And once the Windows 8 machine reboots, there it goes. Okay, it's loading PE. So it will go through the same process. Remember, so you have to have all your drivers loaded, of course, your network. Your NIC settings have to be there. Your storage device driver has to be there to be able to write to the drive. Okay, so that one, the one on the left is actually applying the image now. The one on the right is actually wiping the drive. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this to let this run through its thing, but I'm going to leave the timer running so that we can see how long this takes. Okay, so the Windows 7 one just finished applying the image. That's at about 5 minutes. Now it's going to reboot. Now continue with the install phase. Okay, so the Windows 7 one in about 8 minutes. The image is laid down, everything's installed. Now it'll go through its normal prompts, and your test sequence will complete anything that you've had to find. So if you have an auto login, you're installing additional applications after the fact, or if you're doing BIOS updates or pushing any settings to the machine, installing other software, that kind of thing. Okay, at about 9 minutes and 31 seconds, the Windows 8 one just finished up. Okay, so you see the Windows 7 one. It should go ahead and finish everything that it needs to now with the task sequence. Okay, there it goes. We have in our task sequence defined at the end of everything to restart, so it's going to reboot. Okay, so we're about 12 minutes in. Both the Windows 7 and the Windows 8 machine are done. You can see they're both joined to Active Directory. They're completely fully managed. They have all of our custom information. So I have a test account, so we can just let's go ahead and restart both of these. Okay, so let's go ahead and log in with our test account. And this is the very first login for this user account, so it's going to go through and create the profile. And there we go. So less than 14 minutes in, we're completely re-imaged, completely zero touch, no one at the location, and fully logged in with the first login. Okay, that was the first login. Let's go ahead and log out, and let's log in for a second time. Show you the difference. Okay, so that was the second login, and every login from there on out. And there we go. Zero touch imaging.